Hello, my name is Caitlin Miller, and I decided to do my communications project on the differences in language between men and women. So first, for my visual aid, I found this picture online, and I just thought it kind of brought a funny twist to the differences that in men and women. This side is obviously the masculine side. It's very orderly, very logical. And this side over here is the feminine side, and it's very colorful and very emotion based. And I thought it's very stereotypical. But it's true. I think there's obviously logic based behind the way that the differences between how men and women think, and it would follow that if men and women think differently, they use language differently. And so, I went online and looked up some things for my presentation. I found a study online posted by Matthew L. Newman from the Department of Social and Behavioral Sciences at Arizona State University, and he found that women use words more often related to psychological and social topics, and men were more likely to refer to objects or personal or impersonal topics. So more things that were more stationary, more permanent, were things that men thought about more often. And women were very much based on emotion, things that the relationship that they had between other people, type of things. In the document Human Communication Research, published in 2001 by A. Mulock, who is a leading behavioral scientist. He published it in 2001, and he found that women were generally wordier, both in speech and writing, but men would take more turns in speaking. So I think that that's where we get the thought of the long-winded woman, is because women don't take as many turns in speaking. We speak about the same amount, men and women, but women just speak for longer amounts of time than men. And men are able to use more rebuttals, or I shouldn't say able to, but men do use more rebuttals and more opinions, back and forth mostly. In Conrad and Repin's Corpus Linguistics, Investigating Language Structure and Use, published in 1998, by Cambridge University Press, they found this was a study based on how the differences between how men and women used grammar mostly, and they found that women would use more adverbs and conjunctions, and men would swear more, use longer words, and talk more about locations. And so they would describe where things happen more often, and women would kind of just use more adverbs, so more descriptive words about how things were done or about people. They also found that women were far more likely to use the first person singular, which doesn't seem like such a big deal, but they've also found that depressed people are more likely often to use the first person singular as well. And so you can kind of make the connection there that maybe women at times seem more depressed. I wasn't 100% sure on that, but that's just kind of a study that they found, that they both use that far more often than the happy male. In our book, it discusses the conversation traits between men and women, and how men discuss more of work and sports than women do, and women discuss more about relationships and families. And I think that's very stereotypical, but it's also, there's logic based behind that. There's been studies that prove that, and I think that follows because women are seen as more nurturing and men as more kind of the breadwinner type of thing. I also, in Mulock's study, he had a disclaimer that said, people are, in fact, a quote from it was, there are always exceptions to everything. And he noted that with all the information gathered, all the studies shown, and all the research made, nothing is really definitive. Some studies contradict each other. Some studies are so specific that they only apply to some certain amounts of people. And I think that's a good thing to kind of point out, is because men and women think differently, and it's very individual how we use our language. I liked that. Well, I thought about how it is very individual, but gender is such a huge part of who you are individually that it only makes sense that you can group people into gender, despite the fact that there's going to be leeway in both men and women. Your gender is such a huge part of your personality and of your identity that it would follow that certain things are going to be the same between men and women, and between other women and other men. Another of Mulock's findings was that he had conflicting reports of emotion. In some studies that he did, he found that women used more emotion words than men, and that's very what a lot of people come up with. But then in another another study that he did, he found that they were actually about the same. They just used different emotions. When faced with criticism, women were more likely to use positive emotions, kind of take the criticism and fix whatever it was that they were being criticized for, kind of improve themselves. And men were more likely to be angry and kind of criticize back or retaliate or do, just be angry about it. And I thought that was, but he also said that was still consistent with the finding that women are more nurturing and men are a little bit more aggressive. And I really like that two conflicting reports can still be right, in that they kind of still, despite the fact that they give totally opposite sides, they kind of still reinforce that stereotype. And I think that in science you have to research the opposite in order to be found true. If all you ever do is look for one side of the story, you're only ever going to have one side of the story, and there's always at least one more. And so I think I really like that he had opposing sides and opposing information, and that how when he still brought them together, they still kind of reinforced the same thing. And so that is my presentation. Thank you very much for your time.